Well, hello everybody. Welcome once again to our North Park Family Ministries Parenting Podcast. I did an initial take and it was like a tongue twister, so I did get it out that time.
Way to be authentic and let everyone know. You don't have to tell them that.
That's right. It's true. Actually, that could have been hidden. It's a podcast.
Really could have been.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what Cody does our editing for us. So Cody, thank you for not editing that in or out. Anyway, what a mystery to start our podcast. I am Matt Loveday, pastor of Family Ministries here at North Park. Glad that you have decided to listen in or watch in anywhere you watch your podcasts or listen to your podcasts. And I'm joined here by Joel Kelsey on staff. So Joel, why don't you start off? Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so I'm a father of 3 kids. Been married for almost coming up on 12 years this May. It's been a long time. We always forget. We're like once you get up to 10 years, it's just all. It's
There
just
you
like,
go. Yeah, it's
double digits. Like
yeah. And do you still remember how old your kids are now?
So I do, because 9, 6, and 3.
There you go.
It's very easy because they're all 3 years apart, and Reed's birthday's in October, and he's the last one in the year. So now It's like 3, 3, 3. Before it was like 9, 5, and 3, which is So some good maths are going on right now in the Kelsey household.
Good.
But
yeah, well, Christine and I have been married 15 years this past summer. And yeah, we've got 3 kids as well, 13, 11, and 8. So so we're just a couple of dads here having a conversation today.
Couple of dads.
And this is the whole point of the parenting podcast, is we want to just make this a very conversational type of a endeavor for people to listen into. We've had a few of these. We've done one on the book of Revelation that I did with Josh, our youth pastor here at North Park. And then we did one on fear, kind of around Halloween with Krista, our children's ministry director. And then just this last month in December, we did one with Paula talking about just the busyness of life as parents and things. So there's no real rhyme or reason as to why we choose the things we do, but today we're going to talk a little bit about setting goals in our lives, but also with our kids. It's something that I don't think that we think about a lot, but of course, when this podcast is being released, it'll be the new year soon. Like we're at 2023. Like that was like a futuristic year. Remember when you were a kid and you would think like, I'm going to be living in space in 2023. I'm sure of it.
We'll have hoverboards by then and flying cars. And guess what? Nope.
Back to the Future lied to me.
It lied to all of us.
Anyway, so we're going to talk about setting goals because obviously New Year's resolutions for some people are a really big thing. So I don't know. Are you a big New Year's resolution guy? Have you set ones in the past?
I'm not a big like New Year's resolution person, but usually in the new year, I try to come in with like a new focus of something I want to do, which you can say is a resolution, is a goal. Like years before, it's been like, hey, I want to read more. Instead of being like, I want to read $20, it's like, I just want to read more. And sure enough, that year I read more than I ever had. And other years, it's like, hey, I want to get more exercise into my routine, or I want to run more and doing stuff like that. And like, so for this year, I've been wanting to run a half marathon for a couple of years now. In my family, we have a bunch of runners who have run half marathons before. My aunt won the Toronto Marathon years back. So it's like, hey, those genes are in me somewhere. I just got to dig them out and do that. And so I've always wanted to do that. And then like this March, my grandfather passed away, and he had run multiple marathons, including the Boston. And this year I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I was already starting to practice running, but I'm like, I'm going to run a half marathon, and wanted to do it under 2 hours and crushed it in 1:59:59. So
nice.
That was my goal this year. Barely. I don't even want to know what like the milliseconds were, but like I try to set like a goal, but also not make it like hard and fast, like that it's a failure if you didn't, but just focuses on the new year. And
that's a good point. Like it's a generality more than something really specific that maybe you have to be held to. So I know a lot of people like to obviously set a New Year's resolution, and I don't think it's certainly not a bad thing. It's always a good thing to put something out before you. I remember I've never been a big New Year's resolution person. I think much like you all set some. I have ideas of things that maybe I'd like to do this coming year, and New Year's is just a natural time. Obviously, that's why it's a big thing. The start of a new year. What's something I want to kind of focus on? I remember one year, the closest I ever would have gotten to a New Year's resolution, but I don't think it was actually in New Year's, was I set myself a goal to read through the Bible in a year. I'd never done that before. I was in my early 20s at the time, so a number of years ago. And so I thought this would be a good goal to set for myself. And over the course of the year, I did accomplish it. So I think there is something that is really important about setting goals for ourselves. But you mentioned it earlier, there's a little bit of a tension sometimes that we can set ourselves up for failure, right? And so maybe that's why some people stick away from it, because like, oh, I'm going to start really well January 1st, but by January 6th, I'm going to be feeling miserable about myself. So anyway, I think, as I said at the beginning, we often don't think about setting goals with our kids, maybe specifically, or maybe as parents, we we forget to take care of ourselves. And so sometimes setting goals for self-care is really important as a parent, to say, hey, I need to do some things for me. I'm kind of always giving out and helping my kids and doing what's needed in life. But sometimes a goal can be really good to be set for our own self-betterment, right? So have you ever had an experience like that where maybe a goal has been too big and it's almost just led you directly into failure?
Oh yeah. Even like, so a couple of years ago, I wanted to try to run more and I wasn't able to. It was like something where it's like, I started running out in January and it was like, oh man, my lungs don't do well in the cold. And, like this past year, my goal for 2022 was to steward our finances better.
There you go.
And I did not do that well at all. Like I did horrible. I was like, hey, we're going to pay off our credit card. And we paid it off a little bit, but not where we wanted to. And that's why like the phrase goal is really hard. Because if you think of like sports, like you either get the goal or you don't. It's not like hey, you had a lot of attempts, good for you. It's a very like hard yes or no thing. But just trying to focus and do better at. And sometimes like the success isn't the completing it, the success is in trying it. Like,
yeah, completely.
So for us, I'm like, we put a big focus on doing better with our finances this year. And we did better. We didn't get where we wanted to go, but we still tried. And that's still a success. Just because we didn't fully accomplish it doesn't mean we failed.
Yeah. And that's great, Joel, because I think that for our kids especially, if we are setting goals and we're shooting for something, even if we fall short, I mean, that happens all the time in life, as you say, right? So I think in that we do model for our kids that it's okay to go after something that you really want to be able to accomplish. But if you don't achieve it, if you don't get there, it's actually okay. What have I learned in the process? How have I gotten better? And if I never would have started the process, I wouldn't have got even this far. So I think that's an important thing, when we're modeling and showing our kids how important it is to set goals. I think that's a really good point to try to make it that failure is actually okay. It's not like if you don't do this, it's going to be a wasted year or anything. So let's go down that rabbit trail a little bit and talk about the difference between setting goals or helping our kids set goals and then helping them achieve those goals. And I want to start by thinking about setting goals because, admittedly, I don't think that we. Like, I don't know, do your kids set goals for themselves, would you say?
Probably not like, I want to do this. They're probably looser, like kind of in like using the focus versus goal, like trying to do better. Like, so Lennon, our youngest, who is 3, she doesn't set goals. She came home from daycare one day and her 2 bottom teeth were loose. Yeah. So her goal at that moment was losing those teeth. So every day her teacher told her, hey, eat an apple and they will come out eventually. So every day she came home and she ate an apple. We went through like multiple bags of apple a week, which is like, thanks teacher for giving that advice. Eating. I guess, but cost us an arm and a leg. So it's like hard because it's like, you kind of have to go with them at the moment because you don't want to push them too hard. It's like, what's going on in their life and what can we walk with you with? So for her, losing her teeth were her goal. Yeah. She's 3. That's a huge goal. Like trying to figure that out. Where our oldest daughter, Ev, she's 9. Her goal, she didn't have a great grade on her math report card. Her math was really low. So for her goal, and we talked about it, like we're not trying to be, I feel like when I grew up, my parents were very much like, at least my dad, if you're watching this, Dad, I love you. They raised me great. I'm here. So, but it was very much like, oh, like these are what your grades need to be as opposed to like trying to improve. And I think one big thing is like when our daughter got her report card back, it wasn't like, your grade isn't good enough, but it was talking about how do we improve from there? Like, do you want to do better in math? Like, you got this mark. Do you want to have that mark? And she's talking about, my friend got an A in this. And we're like, okay, how do we improve on that? And working with her on math homework, like getting her doing it and like talking about revising your work, not just sending it in, doing it quickly. So goals for her are taking more time on math, is trying to do better, actually finishing her homework when she has it, and like slowing down. So it's different for each kid, but trying to use what's happening in their life just as examples of like, okay, let's partner with them. Let's walk alongside with them, because they can see that they're wanting to accomplish something, but not trying to shove it down their throats at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, kids that are different ages are going to have different goals. And I don't even know if our kids would necessarily use those words, but maybe they do have interests, or they have desires. They have things that they want to do or want to learn. And I think as parents, it's our job to kind of help them understand what those interests are, and then be able to maybe help set some healthy expectations or goals to pursue some of those interests. But as we said before, not in the sense of you have to get to a certain point. It's, hey, let's just kind of explore it a little bit. So I think this idea of helping our kids even coming to understand what it is that they'd like to set goals about, right? Like for Ev, if it's improving in your math, well then, you as a parent can then come along and support that. I think sometimes with goal setting, where we sometimes run, or there's a big tension in our parenting, is when we're kind of setting goals for our kids. And that's, I mean, to be fair, I think that's a natural thing. We all want our kids to succeed. We all want them to do the best that they possibly can. And so sometimes we want to motivate them towards a certain, depending on what stage of life they're in, towards a certain goal or towards a certain place. And as I said, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think we have to be very cautious that, are we helping them set goals that they want to accomplish, or are we setting expectations for them that are really our goals for them? And there can be a blend of the both, right? But so maybe setting the goals and having that understanding, keeping our kids in mind and what they're interested in is important. What about motivating them to then go out and meet those goals? I think you gave us a couple of examples, but how do we motivate without pushing our kids?
Yeah, I think trying to just be as supportive as you can, because it is hard. You don't want to, every kid is different too. So it's like, you would know better than I would having older boys, but like you can't push each child the same way. They need different support. They need different love and care in each time. So each child is going to be completely different. So with our daughter Ev, like she had, again, so using the math example as something, she came home one day and she was like, she had done a math quiz the day before and got her test back. She's like, I don't want to tell you what I got. And I'm like, why? I'm like, I don't care. And like, it's a reflection of how she views me, because she's like, I don't want you to see what I got, thinking that I'm going to be angry. And she got like, I don't know, like a B-, a C+. Like it was out of, I forget, like 24, and she got like 16 or 18 on the quiz, whatever that is. And I'm like, you did great. Like, fine. Fantastic. I'm like, we're putting that right on the fridge, because trying to still support them even when they're trying. It's focusing back on that trying. Like, so when, you get a B-, something that maybe you're ashamed of, which is still a good mark, we're going to still put that on the fridge and be like, no, you did a good job. You tried, you did your best. Your best wasn't up to your standard, but that's something you still focus on and work on. So trying to walk alongside them and not shame them when they feel like they failed, reminding them that, hey, you're still doing great. And like, it's hard because you don't want to be in like everyone gets a participation trophy, right? Like,
that's right. Yeah.
That's like something you're trying not to be like, hey, you got all D- on your report card. Good job, kid. But it's also like walking with them and just trying to get them to improve as much as they want to. Like Ev is great at math, and it doesn't reflect always in her report cards because she rushes things. She's amazing at art. I don't know. She's got all of my wife Alyssa's giftings, because like I look at her report card, I'm like, this is not mine. And it's like, she loves art. She wants to do it. So we're like, let's focus on that. Like her goal, she wants to be an artist when she grows up. So we're like, hey, how do we do that? Like looking at different classes, finding other ways. So it's still like supporting them in the moment they are, whether that's disappointed because they did bad on a test, or it's because they have an interest, and just trying to walk alongside that. And it's hard because goals are something that seem very definite, but it's again, just finding their interests, finding what they're focused on, what they want to accomplish, and just trying to be as hands off, but also just vocal support, like knowing that they're loved and supported no matter what. Because because often they don't want to come to us when they have issues. Like you would know with preteen boys, they're like, they can keep a lot of issues to themselves and not want to share any of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think you really touched on something so important when you're talking about encouragement with kind of where they're at and where they're wanting to go, right? Mm-hmm. Like our kids, depending on what ages they are, or of all ages, even as adults, we can set maybe unrealistic goals for ourselves. You know, shoot for the stars. Yep. Why not? And especially with our kids, we want to encourage them in that, right? I want to be a professional athlete. I want to be a movie star. Mm-hmm. I want to be a Nobel Prize winner. I want to be an astronaut. And we all know how difficult these things are. Sure. And what are the chances that my child will be this, right? But at the same time, you don't want to be a voice of discouragement to say, well, that's not possible. Right. Let's set our goals a little bit lower, right? But I think it's helping them find out who they are, what they're really interested in, what brings them meaning and purpose in life. And some of those things are more important gauges of success, I think, or arrival than maybe the accomplishments that oftentimes our world puts on things. So I think that idea that you've shared with us, Joel, of being just a support for our kids through all of the different kind of results that they get or changes in their interests. I mean, my boys will be interested in one thing for like a few months, and then the next it's something totally different. Yep. And that can be frustrating as a parent because you're like, what? You'll never succeed if you don't stick with this one thing. You got to keep going with it. But like my boys are really into sports, and so many people I talk about it's actually really, really good to be a multi-sport disciplined person, that you don't necessarily need to just choose, hockey or basketball, and that's the only sport you do all the time, every day. It actually is a more well-rounded, helps you more rounded as an athlete for success if you just kind of diversify your portfolio maybe a little bit. Yeah. But I think that we can translate that thinking a little bit sometimes into whether it's academic goals or even just relationships, social goals, rather than focusing on a few things, help them kind of see the possibilities of the many, because they're still just young. There's a really great book that the Fuller Youth Institute put out called Growing With. It's a parenting book. A little bit more for, I guess, when your kids get older, kind of through the teen years and stuff. But one of the illustrations that they use is that, at different stages of life in your parenting, it's like when they're younger, you kind of lead from ahead, and you're kind of setting some of those goals or motivating your kid towards a direction, because they don't have the ability to make those decisions for themselves. So you're kind of out front and you're leading them, telling you, come this way. And then, in the teen years or so, you kind of come alongside as a parent, and you're no longer leading them out front, but you're coming alongside and saying, hey, where is it that you want to go, and how can we kind of figure this out together? And then later on, you become more like a resource, and you're motivating from behind. Right. Your child's independence is greater. They're out ahead. They're marching forward into autonomy and independence. But you as a parent are a resource, a fallback, a cheerleader. And so that illustration for me really helped maybe sometimes understand the different roles as a parent that I sometimes have to take. And even in different, like I would say that it's not necessarily specific to those ages. Sometimes our older kids still need someone to go up in front of them and say, you need to move in this direction a little bit more. Sometimes our younger kids, we need to step back and not helicopter so much and just say, hey, you go out and I'll be here as a safety net kind of thing. So I think maybe those are some good principles that we can, I don't know, maybe think about or whatever in our parenting. But yeah, you've shared some really great things in that. And I guess as we look to wrap up, I wonder about, how our faith influences the types of goals and objectives and things that we want to set for our kids or see them do. Because, I mean, the Bible has a lot to say about, legalism and just doing things for its sake. And, we want our kids to be praying. We want our kids to be reading their Bibles, to, do all these things. But we don't want their faith to just be something that's like, check these boxes and you're good.
100%.
So, I don't know. Do you have any kind of thoughts on how, how does our faith inform our own personal goal setting or helping our kids set goals, maybe when it comes to their faith life?
Yeah, I think that's good, because I think, like, at least I grew up in the church, so I knew a lot of the, like, I could tell you the who, the what, the when, the where of every Bible story, but I didn't necessarily know the why. And I think I think helping our kids figure out the purpose of faith is like so huge for figuring them out, like why I pray, why I should be connecting and talking to God every day. Like, what's the purpose behind that?
Yeah.
Other than just like me talking to God. Because a lot of times we describe it like, you can talk to your best friend anytime you want. Like,
That's
here we
right.
go, kids. He's right there whenever it's a phone line that's always open, which they
Yeah.
don't know what phone lines are.
Yeah.
But like actually letting them know why it's important to talk to God, why it's important to read your Bible, not just like do it, check that box off, like make sure you've done it today. And I think helping with any goal, it's like, why do you want to run this year? Why do you want to be more athletic, eat better, be better with your finances? Everything, it comes down to the purpose of it. And I think a lot of times with our goals, with our kids, we can figure out, okay, well, what is the point of this? Like, I want you to be a professional at, like, think of like the crazy like soccer or hockey mom who's like, no, you need to be there all the time, which usually it's dads more than moms. Let's be real. I'm not sure why women get the hit on that, but like
for sure,
trying to push your kid, like, you need to do this. And it's like, well, why? What's the purpose of it? Because your kid might be in the NHL one day. Well, that's pretty unrealistic. It's like trying to give them purpose and figuring out that why and ask the deeper questions, not just do it because you're told to, but do it because there's a reason behind it and explaining the reason behind it. Like taking that step back. We're in Advent right now. We're filming this in December.
That's right.
Insider secrets. And we're reading like a verse a day at supper time with our kids. And we put the little verse up. It's like little laminated cards. And before we started it, we talked about why we're doing it. We're doing it to remember the birth of Jesus, that God sent him to die for us so that we can have eternal life. And the purpose of it, not just let's read these every day, kids, because it's Christmas time and that's what we do, and explaining the purpose of it.
Yeah, it kind of comes full circle to what you said at the very beginning, right? Where it's more important, maybe the generalized goal of understanding, I want to read more, I think you said at the beginning, right? Rather than maybe 20 books. Well, 20 books might be a good specific concrete goal to put in front of you, but the purpose behind it is so that you can learn more, or that you can become a better reader, absorber of information, whatever that might be. And I think that's important with our faith, because when it does just become the task of, I'm going to accomplish, like I said, my goal of reading through the Bible, in a year. And I had a seminary prof who always used to say, it doesn't matter how many times you've been through the Bible, it's actually how many times the Bible's been through you. That was just kind of like tagline, right? Yeah.
That's good. That's deep. Yeah.
And because you can read through the Bible and accomplish a goal, but unless you've actually opened your life up to say, God, what are you saying to me through your word? It's not going to be transformative necessarily in our lives. And I think if we can convey that to our kids with spiritual goals and ideas of, like I think of Micah 6:8, right? Our youngest boy, Micah, he's, we love Micah 6:8 and the verse that talks about, you know what God requires of you, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And those are kind of general goals and characteristics. And whatever specific goal you set, you can say, is this going to help me live more justly as a human being in the world? Is this going to help me to be more merciful and more loving as a person? Because that's how faith informs our living, right? Rather than our living informing our faith. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Micah 6:8, I think of that, and I think that that's so rich for us in faith as parents and as adults, but it's also rich for our kids to see, because it's not so much about arriving at a place, it's about knowing why you're on the journey. And then failure doesn't become so much of a thing, because maybe you didn't reach or obtain that specific goal, but I can look back and say, but I moved forward in my relationship with God.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think that's really important. So anyway, this has been good. Any final thoughts? If you were talking to someone after this conversation, or you wanted to highlight one thing to say, I think this is a good thing to remember when you're thinking about goals and objectives for your life and your kids' lives. Is there something that would stand out to you?
I think just working with your kid, like figuring out where they are in life, try not to push them too hard, but also understanding when they're going in a direction to give them as much fuel as they need in that moment. So if they're into a sport, be their biggest supporter in that moment. If they are dragging their feet until you hate it, you don't continue to drag them and push them. You talk to them about it. If you've made the commitment for 13 weeks, you've got to still go through with it. But being their supporter, And yeah, leading in front sometimes. I think that example of great is sometimes, yeah, you got to lead up front, you got to lead with them, and then you got to be that resource. And I think trying to determine when those moments are is going to be hard, but that's going to be so key with our kids' relationship now, but also in the future. Like, that's a hard thing about being a parent of young kids. It's like, okay, what are we doing now that's going to affect our relationship in the future? And being attentive of their needs and just being that support is going to be huge in the younger years.
Yeah. I think that idea of support and encouragement, and I like how you said it's a continual conversation. We often say that in our parenting podcast or anytime I'm having conversations with people, is it's not just a one-time thing. You kind of have to keep assessing, keep evaluating, keep talking about it with your kids. That's good. I think for me, goals can sometimes be so self-centered, like I want to do this, but I think if we can do anything to encourage ourselves and our kids to set goals that, yes, do benefit us, but ask a deeper question. How is this going to benefit those around me? My friends, my neighborhood, my city, my world? Because I think that's where our faith informs that. Because our faith isn't about us. It's about becoming more like Christ. It's about making a difference in people's lives around us. And I think even with our goal setting, we can do things for ourselves. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think we should have the underlying motivation of why and how is this benefiting others as well. And I think that's something even our kids can start to learn at a young age. So anyway, thanks for the conversation, Joel.
Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah,
it was
welcome.
awesome.
Thanks for listening in, everybody. Tune in next month. We'll continue on in these parenting conversations. All right, until next time, take care and God bless.
See you, everyone.
See ya.